The rescue ship Ventara's hope hummed with the sterile efficiency of a Galactic Coalition medical vessel. In Quarantine Bay 3, the tension was thick enough to taste. 3 CAX medics stood at a careful distance from a transparent containment pod, every scanner powered down, every step measured. Dr. Vexith, the senior physician, spoke through clenched teeth. Another failure. The cub will not allow anyone within 2 meters. Sedatives do not work on his species, and force would traumatize him further. Inside the pod, a small creature no larger than a Terran house cat huddled in the corner. His name, at least the name on the manifest, was Milo. Silver-blue fur matted with dried blood. Burn marks crossing his tiny body. A left hind leg bent at an unnatural angle. And eyes that should have been luminous amber, faded to a traumatized gray. A medic lifted a scanner. Milo's head snapped up. He released a high-pitched keen. Equipment screamed with feedback. Monitors flickered. The medics flinched as if something invisible had punched straight into their nerves. Captain Jalen watched from the doorway, crest flattened with helpless grief. Report. We found him in a smuggler's hold, a medic said. 3 weeks in a cage meant for cargo. No food. No water. Injuries at least 2 weeks old. He will die if we cannot treat him. Dr. Vexitha's voice tightened. Every approach triggers an empathic shockwave that disrupts our neural pathways. It is a defense mechanism. It is also preventing treatment. Captain Jalen's gaze stayed on the cub. Is there nothing else? Before Nora arrived, the medics had tried everything that didn't involve force. They had dimmed the bay lights. They had piped in calming frequencies used on prey species. They had projected soothing shapes across the pod walls, gentle spirals, slow drifting clouds of color. Milo had answered every attempt the same way. With terror. With that keening cry that turned technology into noise and turned trained professionals into staggering strangers inside their own bodies. The first time it happened, one medic collapsed, clutching his skull as if the sound had reached into his thoughts and shaken them loose. The second time, Dr. Vexith ordered the entire team to retreat and recalibrate their approach. The third time, he stopped counting failures and started counting hours left before Milo's body simply gave up. That was the problem with empathic species. When they were safe, they could soothe entire rooms. When they were afraid, their fear became a weapon they never meant to fire. A quiet voice from the doorway. Perhaps I could try. All eyes turned. The human stood there in a plain grey uniform, maintenance division, not medical. Dark hair tied back. Warm brown skin. Brown eyes that held a softness that didn't belong in a place built for emergencies. Her name patch read, Nora. Dr. Vexith blinked. Human Nora, with respect, you have no medical training. Another medic added, more bluntly, and humans are predators. Forward-facing eyes trigger prey instincts. The cub will see you as a threat. Nora didn't argue. She nodded once. I know how it looks. But I grew up on a farming colony. We raised scared animals. Hurt animals. Sometimes bright rooms and sharp tools make fear worse. She looked at the pod. Captain. May I? The captain hesitated, then nodded. Proceed. Carefully. Nora approached the 2-meter line the medics had marked like a warning sign. She didn't cross it. She knelt down and lowered herself to the deck, making herself smaller. Less looming. Less threat. She didn't stare into Milo's eyes. She kept him in her peripheral vision. From her pocket, she pulled out a worn bandana and placed it on the deck between herself and the pod. Then she leaned back with her hands open and empty. Hey there, Nora whispered. I'm not going to hurt you. The translator on her collar clicked uselessly. Milo was too young, too broken, to care about language. So Nora didn't rely on words. She began to hum. Soft. Low. A melody with no sharp edges. The medics watched, frozen. At first, Milo didn't move. His body stayed coiled tight, made of fear. But his ears twitched. The keen building in his throat faded into silence. Minutes passed. Nora kept humming. Sometimes she spoke in a low, steady rhythm. I know you're scared. I know everything hurts. But you're safe now. No one here will hurt you again. Inside the pod, Milo's faint bioluminescent patterns shifted from panicked blue to a cautious yellow-green. Nora didn't move closer. She just stayed. Slowly, Milo uncurled. His dull eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made the bay feel smaller. Lyrian cubs were empathic. They tasted intent. And what Milo tasted in this human was something he hadn't felt in months. Compassion without demand. Warmth without a trap. Milo took one trembling step forward on 3 legs, dragging the injured limb. Then another. Dr. Vexith whispered. By the ancients. Nora remained perfectly still. When Milo reached the barrier, he pressed his head against the wall as if trying to close the distance through sheer will. Nora changed one thing. She turned her body slightly sideways, open, but not squared up like a threat. Milo's breathing hitched. Then he made a sound, small, fragile, like breaking glass. A chirp. The pod's lock indicator flickered from red to amber. Captain Jalen's voice was tight. Do not. Nora lifted one finger, a gentle request for patience, and touched the latch. The pod opened with a soft hiss. Milo froze. Nora stopped the instant he tensed. She waited. Then Milo stepped out. One paw. Then another. Then his whole trembling body, moving like he expected pain with every breath. He limped toward Nora, drawn by something he couldn't explain. When he reached her, he paused, tiny chest heaving. Nora didn't grab him. She let him choose. Milo leaned forward, pressed his face against her chest, and collapsed into her arms. When Milo collapsed into Nora's arms, the empathic shockwave didn't vanish completely. It changed. The jagged, painful spike softened into something wide and heavy, grief more than fear, exhaustion more than panic. It rolled through the bay like cold fog. One medic's hands began to shake. Another blinked rapidly, eyes watering without permission. Dr. Vexith swallowed hard, steadying himself on pure training. Do not take it personally, he warned his team. You are feeling what he has carried alone. Nora felt it too. Not as a psychic blast, not as interference in her nerves, but as an ache in her chest that made breathing feel tight. She understood trauma. Not because humans were special, but because humans had spent their whole history learning what pain did to the mind. So Nora did what she could do. She breathed slow. She kept humming, the melody steady as a heartbeat. And she held Milo like he was allowed to fall apart now. The medics worked around her with quiet urgency. When a scanner beeped too sharply, Milo twitched and the air shimmered with a small pulse of alarm. Nora immediately lowered her voice, barely a whisper. Easy, Milo. I'm here. You're safe. The pulse faded. Dr. Vexitha's eyes flicked to her, startled. It wasn't the words. It was the certainty behind them. For Lyrian empathic senses, certainty mattered more than language. After the splint was set and the burns were cooled, Dr. Vexith gave a nod to his team. Nutrition now. He's been starving. A medic lifted a tiny nutrient pouch. Milo tensed. Nora adjusted her hold, turning so Milo could see the pouch from the safety of her arms. She let him sniff the air. She waited for his body to decide. Slowly, Milo's ears loosened. The pouch touched his lips. He took one weak sip, then another. A sound escaped him, so small it barely registered, half sigh, half whimper, the release of a body remembering it was allowed to live. Even the hardened medics looked away, embarrassed by the sting in their eyes. The empathic wall dissolved. Dr. Vexith snapped into motion. Now. While his defenses are down. A medic hesitated. If we separate him. We don't, Dr. Vexith said, and looked at Nora. Can you hold him steady? Nora tightened her arms just enough to be secure. I'm not letting go. The medical team moved in. Splint. Salve. Nutrient line. Clean bandages. Pain management. All of it possible only because the human remained the anchor at the center of the storm. Through it all, Milo stayed pressed against Nora's chest. His tiny claws gripped her uniform, not to hurt, but to hold on. Hours later, the last monitor steadied. Milo's breathing was slow. Steady. Safe. Dr. Vexith approached again, careful not to startle the sleeping cub. "In all my years," he said quietly, "I have never witnessed such complete trust." Nora looked down at Milo, asleep with his face buried against her collarbone. "He didn't trust the lights or the tools," she murmured. "But he could feel I meant it." Captain Jalen stepped closer. "Human Nora. Until the cub is fully recovered, would you consent to being his primary caregiver?" The words landed heavy. Responsibility, attention, scrutiny, and a life depending on her steady hands. Nora brushed one finger along Milo's ear. He didn't flinch. He leaned into the touch. Nora smiled, small and exhausted. "I'm not going anywhere." As Ventara's hope continued through the stars, word spread through the Coalition fleet. Not about a weapon. About a human who sat on a cold deck, hummed a simple melody, and turned a terrified cub's defense into trust. Humans possessed a power no technology could replicate. The power to heal not just bodies, but what lived behind the eyes. In the quiet of the medical bay, Milo slept. Peaceful. Held. And for the first time in a long time, he believed the impossible. That not all powerful beings were cruel. That some hands could be gentle. That sometimes the bravest thing a creature can do is lean into someone's chest and choose to hope again. If this moment hit your heart, tap like, subscribe for more HFY stories, and comment, safe, if you want Milo's part 2.